It's 10 a.m. here in Zurich, so we can officially start this online event. First of all, I would like to say thank you and welcome to today's Innovation Leadership Series, whose title is Your CEO's Innovation Expectations, where we are going to talk about how to research what your company needs and what are your C-level dreams. I am Tanya, office manager at BlueCallom, and today I'm here as your host. Before we officially started with this event, I would just like to go over a few items so you all know how to participate in today's event. First, a recorded version of this webinar will be available, as well as the presentation deck, so you don't need to take any screenshots. Second, you may send in your questions at any time during this presentation. Then we will collect these and address them during the Q&A session, which will be at the end of today's presentation. Now it's time to introduce our moderator. Some of you may already know him. He is Patrick Hanhart, VP of Sales. Patrick has constantly created value with innovative solutions for his clients in the different roles in sales and marketing. Here at BlueCallom, Patrick is guiding corporate innovation leaders to envision a bigger picture of breakthrough innovation. Welcome, Patrick, and thank you for finding the time for joining us today as well. And now I will hand over to you. So please, the stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, Tanya. It's a pleasure. Also, very warm welcome from my side. I would like to introduce the two speakers today. So we have Matthias Fleck, is a director of Institute of Communication and Marketing and professor at digital business at the Lucerne School of Business. He holds a PhD from the University of St. Gallen. And within BlueCallom, he is responsible for the continuous development of the BlueCallom innovation framework. He will join us later. We have Axel here. Welcome, Axel. He's founder and CEO of BlueCallom and chairman of the World Innovations Forum Foundation. Axel started and successfully excited 4 companies, 2 of which reached $1 billion revenue. He's a published author and patent holder, early advisor at LinkedIn. More recently, Axel has been on a quest to discover how the brain creates and processes ideas and how some ideas can disrupt an entire industry. Welcome, Axel.
Hello.
Good.
Patrick, you're unmuted.
Sorry, quickly to introduce BlueCallom. So actually we are enterprise innovation management software company. So we are delivering software, but it's an end-to-end innovation framework and AI software. What are we focusing? We are only focusing on breakthrough innovation. I will come back to that later. And we talk about disruption, how innovation is created, managed, and delivered. Our USP is that we can deliver with your teams an innovation within 6 months, meaning within 6 months, we have a solid business case for breakthrough innovation. Our target customers are business enterprises and governments. As Tanya said, we are located in Zurich. And we are a young company founded in October 2020. So our topic today is a hot topic because what we have discovered in the market, that there is a gap between the hopes of company and the company's expectations and what we can deliver. So what we recently have seen is that we know about 50 innovation managers who lost their jobs. But also we see agility of few businesses who thrive. And we believe all companies have the ability to reinvent themselves. So bigger companies can be reinvented and they can build their own businesses or new businesses, even like agile small startups. So we developed an innovation framework and an AI-based software for any company to become innovative. And I see also Mattes joined us. Welcome, Mattes. Good. So back to the definition of innovation, we have a separate webinar about the topic, but innovation is a breakthrough that elevates people and organizations in the way that they do things that was not possible before. It's not just improving something, really disruptive, new breakthrough stuff. So from where is our knowledge coming from? Our founders, Axel and Marita Schulze, they founded 4 businesses, of which 2 grew to multi-billion-dollar companies. They have been startup accelerators, and 2 of these startups became unicorns. They analyzed about 1,200 unicorns and to understand why they have been successful. And with that knowledge, combined with the latest discoveries from neuroscience, how to create ideas, thoughts, solutions, this is the ground from BlueCallom. So today, your CEO's innovation expectations. What kind of expectations do they have? Because it's important to replace declining businesses or technologies. So we see many changes and winning new markets, and also keeping up with the mega trends and the sustainability development goals. So we talk about multi-billion-dollar transformation. And here I would like to hand over to Axel to start our discussion today.
All right, thank you very much, Patrick. Also from my side, everybody, hello and good morning, or even good afternoon. I saw some of you are from Asia coming in, and yeah, as Patrick mentioned, and I think he can forward the slide. We want to share something that hasn't been really clear or shared before. We had the privilege to speak with roughly 50 plus CEOs with hundreds of innovation leaders. And the outcome was stunning, as most of the CEOs' expectation after digging a little bit deeper into it were quite different than the results from the teams. And like Patrick mentioned before, we had quite some you know, so to speak, people who just lost their job as an innovation manager, which these days should be an unheard of situation. And so with that said, we thought we need to share some of these findings that we gathered to help bridge the gap between the C-level and their expectations, and on the other side, the you know, the teams that are feverishly trying to develop some innovation. Patrick, can you forward the slide deck, please? So when we started with the conversation with CEOs, we wanted to know what they're not even what they are expecting from the teams right now per order or per mandate or whatever they, you know, the instrument may be, but what would it be that make them happy? And so we realized that in almost any and every conversation we had, you know, they came back and said, you know, I mean, from a innovation point of view, I mean, a real breakthrough, meaning there is a significant change, like all these unicorns actually producing and all the startups before, and even the same company their CEO in today, their founders basically built a breakthrough and have become one of these gigantic enterprises. Now, and that's what they're looking for. And they're looking for, shifts like into electricity when they are in the oil company, or for zero carbon, or for new logistics. They try to find ways for the cold chain of the logistics. For instance, if you freeze stuff down or cool something down and carry it around the earth, that this goes faster, better, and so on. And when we ask, so what's the revenue that the incremental revenue that you're expecting from this innovation? That was an interesting short stop, and everybody was thinking about it and said, yeah, that's actually a good question. I mean, we know where we want to go, but we haven't never done any revenue plans per se. I mean, some actually did, I have to say. There was one company, it's a $150 billion company, and they said it's $150 billion. Wow, okay. So replacing basically the entire revenue because they're from the oil industry and want to go into renewable energy. I mean, that's a mega shift. But we realized it was almost always somewhere in the $1 billion and more. And so we came to a conclusion that it's probably in the neighborhood of between 5 and 10% of the existing revenue is sort of revenue expectation from the CEO. Now, the question was, did you ever communicate this to your team? And the answer was almost always, God, no. I mean, we would completely scare them away. And I said, but how long do you do this? Probably 5 to 7 years. Some did it 10 years, some did it 4 years, with zero outcome of the innovation. There was no innovation, really. It was great improvements. I mean, they did a lot of amazing things. When you look back at the automobile industry, what all the improvements were, that this mega shift from a, basically combustion engine with all the, the environmental loads to a nearly clean electricity-driven car. That attempt was done 3 times. I remember reading in 1935, there was this done in Paris. All taxis were converted to electricity, but then, it seemed to not work out. The reason is, in retrospect, very shady, but that was the outcome. So it is a big number, and I think one of the things we need to cross over in terms of intellectual properties is, what is really the need and the dream of a CEO? What do they want and expect from the team? And let the team know. And then sort of the CEOs, I know there's a couple here, every startup that has, gotten through the first initial stages is aware that if they do well, they become a $1 billion company. When I started C2000, I mean, a $1 billion company was almost sort of an insane idea, but I said, well, we have at least a chance, but also we kept it internally. But there are people who can digest these numbers, young people. And so I think it's important to select the right teams and then actually communicate your dreams. Otherwise, I mean, as we've seen it over the last 10 years, there was zero output. Now, the second aspect that we wanted to understand is the significance. How important is this actually for the company? And to make a long story very short, I mean, it was very important to every CEO we talked to. Likewise, when we talked to teams, they said, they don't care. They want to have marketing and they want to say, yeah, we do innovation and then go on in life. And I can tell you that's not true. I mean, they wouldn't have, in the conversations we had, tell me, just, oh, I don't care. They would say that, it's one of the things that we need to do, but it's probably not the highest priority or something like that. But the conversation was clearly different. And so the result was also there, we need to solve large unsolved problems. And the understanding that is not existent in the teams is that they're looking for ideas, but that CEOs, they want to solve large problems because they know, if I know a large problem that exists, I know the audience who has that large problem. I can check how big this problem actually be in terms of, magnitude for the company. And so we come to a conclusion that here starts already a big discrepancy between the two. One says we need to solve large problems. The other said we need to look for ideas. And when we look for ideas, I can tell you there's an interesting number. It's between 4 and 7 trillion ideas humans create every year. So we're drowning in ideas. I mean, there's more ideas than we can even imagine. Yeah. So in the third piece was when we go from magnitude to significance is to scope. What is it? What is innovation that you're looking for? How would you scope it? What would be the things that need to be done and so on? And most CEOs realize, I mean, at one point, this will be a separate organization. When the team starts, and if we need to take the paradigm of a startup or unicorn or any other small but fast-growing company, they will simply grow and grow and grow. And some CEOs said, yeah, no, we don't want to do that. We want to keep it all in the organization. But we realized that all who tried and all who had some sort of innovation, even if it wasn't quite an innovation, but they gave it back to the organization to produce, to sell, to market, they all failed. I mean, without exception. And that was a red flag. And this is something that, everybody should take into consideration. So the interesting thing is that these three came together, and we were wondering why that has never been communicated. And that was another question we discussed with CEOs, and they said, honestly, it's difficult to demand something as long as we don't even know how this will be possible. Because when we think there are smart teams, there are scientists, and we put together lots of scientists and engineers to solve a problem, but it was very difficult. So it wasn't known that problem solving is not done by experts, because the experts tried already, that's why they are experts, everything humanly possible. But a groundbreaking idea is, as the name says, we're breaking new ground. And that means new thinking. We need to be open enough, the team who does that, to say, I have no idea how this will work, but I start trying to look at all aspects of this new ground that we're breaking. An expert would say, well, I'm an expert. I can tell you right now, it's not working, period. And this is the end of innovation. So it takes different people. The other thing was nobody knew how it's actually done when you do it. So how do you solve the problem intellectually? We have 60-minute, 30-minute brainstorm meetings and so on. But this is what Patrick already mentioned. The neuroscience aspect has changed everything. These brainstorm meetings are basically surface ideas. This is what the brain does, immediately pops up ideas that it finds on the surface of its memory. But if the brain needs to go very deep, then it needs to do very different things. This is very energy consuming. So and the neural ideation process we began to work on about a year ago ended up to be a 4-week sort of brainstorm session. I mean, profoundly different. And it was unclear what's needed to make it actually happen. So it's the team. Do we have to have a separate organization? What are actually foundations of the whole innovation concept, and so forth and so forth. And so the only ones who actually knew, and that is obviously proven, is unicorns. Now, happily, I was one of those, and even twice. And so with our experience, I have to say, and this is how the whole company started, I did not know either, and none of us. I spoke with Mark Benioff, the CEO from Salesforce. I even had a chat once with guys from Microsoft that I know from the early days, with other CEOs, and nobody knew. And I also had to say, well, I had really pops up under the shower somewhere. So it was an act of randomness. until I realized, and that was from the neuroscience insights, the brain is way too complex to do anything randomly. If it would do that, the brain would actually die. So there's no way of doing anything random. And so this is the reason why most CEOs are shy and really careful with demanding anything. We're saying, well, we need to do, billions of incremental revenue, not even knowing how it's done. And so this is the conflict that we're trying to solve. And this is why we're sharing our findings here. It's not to look anybody stupid. It's just basically to help understand the whole, what we call framework of an innovation. So we put it, to make it very short, into 6 groups or clusters. One is the innovation principles. There are 7 principles, starting with the understanding of what is the definition of exactly, thank you, of innovation, then the neuro innovation aspect. How is the brain is actually doing this? I mean, when we lift big weights, we need to understand how muscles work, and when we come up with some creative ideas, we need to kind of understand the behavior of the brain. We don't need to understand the brain. We will never probably get neuroscientists or anything like that. Then understand that there's a holistic model to be seen. When we look into classic methods like design thinking, and I was a big fan of it. I used it myself, and I thought this is really cool. This is sort of a sequence of ideation. But most people stop at the end. So your prototype is done, super. Okay, now somebody will fix it and we'll build it. Now, innovation is not stopping there. Innovation actually begins after the process of ideation. Then we need executive commitment, and this doesn't matter whether this is an executive of an enterprise or a startup founder. There needs to be total commitment for the innovation, because the innovation is a journey. We all should know that, of probably 5 to 10 years. I mean, when we just look back how long it took for Tesla or Facebook or Amazon or any of these names to become sort of a household name, it was 10 to 15 years. It doesn't mean it takes 10 to 15 years to make any decent revenue. I mean, each and every one of us did revenue already after the 2nd year. But until you become this big, bold thing, that takes time. And it doesn't take time because we think, oh gosh, they're all slow. No, there's another thing, I just skip it, market dynamics. The market needs to take time. Most of the market players are conservative, so it takes time for them to decide. And this is something we can shortcut. We can put a gun on somebody's head and say, now you have to buy this. And in order to go through this entire process, execution. So these principles are completely independent of market, industry, technology, behavior, whatever it is. These are the principles of innovation. And then we go very quickly through innovation meta strategy. This is the next layer. We're actually looking into strategies, how to build a strategy for something that is not known yet. That's one of the key things about innovation strategies, because we don't know when we build a strategy what the outcome will be. But we know the outcome, and this is going back to the original inputs, is magnitude, is scope, and is a significance for the company. Now then we go into team culture. What do we need? Do we need a special team or not? Do we need a special culture? What kind of metrics do we introduce? And this is what innovation teams absolutely hate, is you cannot measure us by our creativity. Well, yes and no. I mean, look into an advertising agency. They are measured by their creativity. And if they're creative job by job by job by job, they're a good agency, they get well known, they become very expensive, and they can do only a few jobs versus a lot of little tiny jobs, but they are measured on their creativity. So we're not the first one who do that, but we need the metrics to actually know what we measure. And then a clear picture of an end-to-end innovation journey that, thank you, yeah, it's starting actually by trying to find out what is relevant for the company before we even start ideation. And it goes all the way up to to scaling into a global market. And then somewhere in this process, typically after 5 years, we need to consider re-innovating what we are just innovating, even before we hit the end of the curve. And then the final and last one is the innovation organization model. So how do we organize ourselves? So these are about, I believe, 47 different aspects, and that's the framework of innovation. And that's basically the holy grail. This is nothing that we sell. This is something that we actually make publicly available, because we believe everybody should know how this beast innovation actually works before you can tackle it. Okay, and with that, we have at least a structure, and and when we have that structure in place, I mean, in mind, we can say, okay, now we can actually start doing other things. We can start looking at the innovation team, but also at the CEO. And for a message for the innovation teams out there, remember what the innovation is made of, the innovation framework, and then assume a most likely scenario and present it to your CEO. And you will be surprised, and that's both feedback from CEOs, but also from innovation managers who made the way all the way up, bypassing pretty much anything and everybody in between, not necessarily bypassing your boss. That would be a bad idea. You know, we just don't do that. But with your boss together, get to the CEO and make this presentation. And for the CEO, remember when they start to put something out, how innovation is made. You know, what is the fabric of innovation? What's the innovation's DNA? And then attract the most likely candidates and share the mandate for breakthrough innovation. And this is what we've done over and over and over again. And so some of you we probably talked to already, and it's great that you're back. But the frustrating part is that we always talk about, well, we need to have a conversation with the CEO. And I believe this webinar also helps you understand why. It's not that we are saying, oh, we want to speak with a CEO because that is cool. Not at all. This is the hardest part of the business on both sides, on your side and also on our side. But we realize without the commitment of the CEO as one of the principles of innovation, nothing is happening. But with the commitment of the CEO, everything changes almost immediately. I mean, we typically do an executive workshop is 1 day with the CEOs of those companies. And they produce a mandate to their team within another few days. There is no magic in it. As soon as you understand sort of the process, and Mathis will talk about it in a second, you can go for it. And with that, I'll get it back to Patrick or Mathis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Axel, for this kind introduction and the inspiring thoughts you gave us. And also a warm welcome from my side to the audience. Well, I understand this framework Axel just presented can be a little overwhelming in the first place, and those who have worked with us know there is method to the madness, and we're able to boil it down. So when looking at specific steps you can undertake in order to get to your CEO and in order to make this framework work, it's very simple. I mean, most companies actually have, quite frankly, written down all their challenges. Most companies know what's bothering, whether it be in the annual report or in any strategic documents available to you. Usually the challenge are listed or outlined very clearly. So what we recommend is dig into these documents and explore potential, because that sounds very American, that sounds very superficial in the first place, but most challenges present, and that's the same for SWOT analysts, a chance where you can dig for either new business models, new fields of customers and areas. And when having identified within the research the challenge, having identified potential, start creating a strategy how you would on a very big or on a meta perspective, how you would tackle that. And never do that alone. Start assembling a dream team. A dream team is a team that is made of diverse people. And by diverse, I do not only refer to multi-ethnicity, I do not only refer to gender aspects, I refer to diversity in the sense of that they're coming from different disciplines, different backgrounds, because 5 business people in the room probably see 5 business problems, but together with an engineer, a designer, maybe even an artist, you come to different conclusion, or someone from HR. So choose a really diverse team and also with diverse cognitive abilities. I will refer later to that, what it is. And be aware, it could be the career opportunity of your lifetime, because if you find a path to your CEO, and every good CEO should listen to multi-billion-dollar innovation options, actually he would be a fool not to hand over this project to you, or at least give you a substantial task in this. So if I see someone in my institute willing to thrive, I'm not the one who's stopping him or her. So with that, Patrick will switch me to the next slide. And we don't have time to make this a 5-year project plan. We think it's possible in a rather short period, what I outlined. So week 1, read the annual report and give yourself the goal of how you make just 10% of the annual revenue as your innovation revenue goal. Sounds rather bold, but that's the dimension we're talking about. If someone is going to a CEO and say, we change the ingredient of our food and can save 1%, that's okay, that's fair, but that's not the magnitude we're looking for. Significance. Make sure that the revenue goal you've set, the challenge you've identified, is reaching into your company's strategic direction. Most companies have identified net zero targets. Most companies have identified the challenge with Generation Z and many industry specific challenges. So double check what is your company's most important goal and how can you deliver to that. And scope, that is probably a very difficult one, because we are all tend to not crack the tough nuts. I include myself, but pick a problem that nobody has solved. And then you can be sure you're tackling a field most people are afraid to go on. So if you have that problem, then you don't have to have the answer, but you have to have a great problem. And because there is always someone out there who knows at least a puzzle piece to the answer. And your job is to at least get an idea who could these people be, and take them either in your team or in your network, or reach out to them and explore possible options. And what would it take to solve that problem? And envision in the future if it needs some society changes, some technological changes that might be aware on the horizon, or if it's just a cultural change in your company. Week 4, do you have the magnitude, the significance and scope as the basis for your innovation? Well, pull that team together. 5 people. I already talked about the their scope or their backgrounds, and develop a plan that might blow your CEO away. So easy as that. Introduce yourself, introduce it to your boss, and in week 5, you would somehow work your way up to the CEO. It might not be the easiest path in your life, but most companies nowadays should have a culture where good ideas aren't killed on the floor. That's what elevators are made for. So yeah, and Patrick, so you may have discovered something new, and you may have come to a point where you realize, well, actually, CEOs are looking for entrepreneurial and innovative minds like you. They're not trying to keep them small. They're in desperate need of them. And I'm sure all CEOs within the audience can prove that. And well, during the last 2 to 3 years of our journey, and then for some of us even a longer journey, it has become part of our job to have both the executives and the innovation teams to move forward and upward. And rather don't see this as something frightening on the horizon, see it as the opportunity of your life, and then make something out of it. So here I'm coming to an end, and we're having some final closing words.
Thank you, Matthias. Maybe Axel, you have something to add here at that point, or Tanya, do we have some questions?
From my side, no, I think that's the essence of getting it done.
Okay, so from my side, I can just underline what Matthias, you said. I did it on my own when I was working for a big corporation. So you have to come up with ideas, and the CEO is actually waiting for it. He's expecting to get a good plan, not just an idea, but a good plan how to grow a business in the future. So I just can encourage everybody. So, but talking about innovation and people, we have one question is actually to both Matthias and Axel. What are the most important skills that you need to have in an innovation team? Can you maybe explain or give some hints? You mentioned diversity, but skills.
Yes, as I already worked out on the diversity, Axel has some insights from neuroscience about the cognitive abilities, and maybe he's sharing his thoughts about these. And afterwards, I may chime in.
Okay, yeah. So it started, I have to say, with investors, with other investors, particularly large VCs in Silicon Valley, when we looked at teams. And so every VC says there are the most important three things are for a startup to look at is teams, 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 meaning it's just about teams, everything else is gravy. And we developed sort of a pattern where we said, you know, it's interesting because when you look into most of the startups, and I was back in the days, I was 25 and was one of them, you know, and university drop off, bad degrees and so on. So there was no pattern in terms of skills that we found. And one person said, you know what, I know one thing that is very important. It's curiosity. People who are curious are the best entrepreneurs. And so we discussed that. And so there was another thing, there was boldness, and we talked about you know, courage and so on. And and this model has actually evolved over time, but in the early beginning of that discussion, it was clear it's actually these what we call cognitive abilities or talents, or I mean, these are things that, you know, we bring basically or got from our parents or not. I mean, it's still not quite clear where these talents or cognitive abilities are coming from, because some develop early, some develop later. And but we came up with these 8 C's, and there was, like I said, this is courage, this is curiosity, this is creativity, this is clairvoyance, and so on. And you see it on our website, all detailed outlines. And so this is the substance of a team. And now when we combine this with what Mate said, with a diverse background, we get one thing, and you know that term, people are differently wired. And it's actually indeed a wiring in our brain. It's the connection, how our abilities work and assess things, and you know, we respond to things. And so this is the combination of a brilliant team is these cognitive abilities, and they should be pretty equal amongst the entire team. And then the diversity of backgrounds. If you put a sales manager and a marketing manager, a finance person, an expert, and a business driver together, you have very different characters, very different. And if they need to come to a conclusion, which is what you probably do in your board or in your team, doesn't matter, you know, there is a fight. There is something for, you know, people fight for the best possible solution. And that's what, you know, the team is in innovation, even more than in almost any other group.
And for the decision makers and executives in the audience, it might be unclear where are these cognitive abilities are coming from and how they are, why some certain people have more or less of them. But that's still a question mark. What's quite true is that you can measure them and that you can therefore pick and select teams. So it might be somehow yeah, or it's good we can select people by measuring them, because personality traits, there's a lot of literature out there, a lot of tests, and that's why it is yeah, not chance to find these people. It's actually evidence-based process how you can select these people. So that makes the decision a little easier. So Patrick, do we have other questions?
Yes, about the 6 months, do we have a secret solution to bypass or shortcut the traditional innovation process, the more luxury, the hotel to do a workshop faster, or to fly to Bali? Are there any secrets you want to share?
I think first answer, I think if it's really a breakthrough innovation, 6 months is already quite fast. So the question is looking for a shortcut to the shortcut. So that's the funny answer in the beginning. I think the framework shows that there have to be certain foundations and certain steps undertaken, meaning that it's not a good idea to skip a part. It will bring you to a result, but probably not to the desired one. And maybe Axel can tell from experience what happens if you miss a crucial step, or if you outsmart yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I learned once that this I mean, this is the, you know, the demand on our brain. Innovation is the intellectually most demanding job a brain can perform. And this is the most demanding job since 300,000 years. And we are simply only survived because we're a very weak animal. We only survived because of this ability. But still, I mean, it has evolved. 12,000 years ago, our frontal lobe in the front of this, or sort of called neural cortex, was developed. Now brain continues to develop that, but outsmarting, you know, a performance that we're already driving to the edge, so to speak, is probably a bad idea. And also, when we say, okay, we can skip this or that, I mean, there is this tendency to make it fast. Excuse me, and that's a good thing. But 6 months is really fast. When you think about, we have roughly, take the Fortune 20,000 companies, the 20,000 biggest companies on the planet. They're working on innovation since some 5, 7, 10 years with zero truly innovative outcome. I mean, great improvements. I mean, no questions. And the engineers and the troops who are working on new things did amazing jobs, but there has not been a breakthrough, which means the trying for a shortcut to make it quickly, and you have 2 years time, and then the ROI need to be in 3 years, otherwise we don't even need to start. That is already a demand for a shortcut that actually kills the innovation right there. And if we look at some of the timings, I mean, a child needs on average 9 months to be ready to be, born. Nobody has tried to do a shortcut and say, well, can't we do like 3 months and then pull it out and do something? I mean, that would be insane. And I think, our ability to now finally understand how everything is really done in an innovation process is it's a major step forward. I mean, I was surprised myself to learn over the last 2 or 3 years to just build this whole innovation framework, what is all involved to make it right. And there's nothing that we can skip, like Martis already mentioned. We cannot say, well, skip the market dynamics, because that's something we need to have. Skip the executive commitment. We can do this as a grassroots initiative. Many have tried. Nobody has made it. Well, holistic, this is all such a big thing. Let's start and see. And start and see is the biggest killer for innovation, because you'll start something, then you try to figure out, okay, is this good or not? And if you don't have a clear outcome before you even start, you don't know where to go. It's like, okay, yeah, it's a fun ride. I mean, I did vacation tours with no goal. I was 19 and my friend and I, we went to Europe, and we decided wherever the stoplight is green first, that's the direction we're taking. We ended up in Côte d'Azur. That was nice, but we can't do innovation like that. And so no, I really highly recommend to get strategic when you do innovation. All the experimentation is also, when you look back in intelligence, mechanisms. Children experiment. There's a round block, and you try to put it in a square hole. Doesn't work out, and children need to experiment this. This is where they get their experiences. But then once you get to higher education, you learn that intelligence is the ability to basically solve a problem just by thinking through it without experimentation. That is intelligence. And now we're going actually back to experimentation. Okay, that was good, because nobody knew how it actually works. But I think we should now get back to intelligence and saying, okay, we think through all these aspects. We think through the entire process. We think through what type of people we need. We think through, what we do with our nonlinear process. We're looking back and forward during the entire process. We're thinking through metrics, how the organization should be, how the organization leadership should look like. And if we do this consequently, then the likelihood to come out with an innovation is extremely high. The funny thing about our brain is that it is able to solve almost, I have to put this still into account, almost any problem of any complexity. That sounds completely insane. But the thing is that our brain cannot comprehend a problem. It cannot understand the problem until or unless it has most of the components already there. We can only understand the problem when we say, okay, yeah, I know this doesn't work because this should work, but it didn't also. So we need to fix that, and so on. So you go through, a problem like, geopolitical problems, huge ones, we can solve through thinking through it.
And maybe a short summary from my side. We think of the framework something as the genetic code for the innovation, and each of the principles and the 47 steps in there mark something like a chromosome. So it's a bad idea taking something out of genetic code and say you can do without, because you probably will get something, but it might frighten you. So therefore, there is no shortcut. So
may I just add something? So I was thinking about what Axel and Martis just said. And if the dream team has to think about all this, I don't know, strategy, what the CEO will say, what will be the result? Is there a fear that they will lose creativity in this process?
That is a good question, Tanya, because that's a question that many innovation teams have.
Mhm.
I mean, innovation teams, you can characterize them as there's a couple things they absolutely don't want. They don't want a process. They
Mhm.
don't want a KPI. They don't
Mhm.
want to deal with any kind of administration, but just think. Now,
Mhm.
this is a good thing in general, and we're working on making this as close as possible because we know that the brain is the power of the innovation. But then on the other side, and this was something where we struggled ourselves a bit, I have to say, in the very beginning, is how much should we actually frame things? How much should we put constraints on it? We do the same on the meta strategy. We actually specifically look into constraints from the corporate side because there are constraints. But the interesting thing is, if you talk to entrepreneurs, for instance, my first business was a new type of distribution. I mean, it changed the way distribution is actually done today. And because of the constraints, the solution was actually superior. Because there were constraints that we needed to break away, and there were also constraints that gave us a direction where we said, okay, there are things that we should not break away, because they're the railings, the trails for the flow of logistics and so on. But to answer the question, and because the question could come from anybody out there, is that constraints is not only a limitation, but it's also a very powerful guiding rail. If you go up a very difficult mountain and you know already sort of the path you should go to achieve to get to the summit, to the peak, that's super helpful. And many people who did not have this, the ones who did it for the first time, actually died. I mean, literally. And so constraints are good to a certain degree. And, when we look into the cognitive abilities, people who are bold, who are courageous, who are ignoring the rest of the world and seeing their objectives and their goals, they ignore things anyway. And there's a reason why we look for these kind of type of people. But they're also smart enough to use any vehicle to get to the goal. Yeah.
And I mean, within nature science, people have to be very creative to make their ideas work within the existing laws of physics. So, and we may have on geniuses like Newton, but we think we have found some boundaries and laws and constraints how those business innovation can work, and actually ignoring these constraints is not limiting creativity, but showing limited creativity in working with these constraints. So might be a harsh statement, but shows how important it is to direct creativity into directions that are really fruitful for the outcome of the project.
Yeah, may I just add one thing? So in 1998, we created the very first digital stock exchange. Obviously, there were lots of laws and regulations that we should not do that, and we could not do that. And I learned a sentence saying, you can break, as an entrepreneur, you can break all rules, each and every, but not the law. Okay, so I added after we did that, and I found out how we need to deal with it. Well, if you can break and should not break the law, try to change it. And we actually changed it, because otherwise today, no digital stock exchange and crowdfunding and so on, equity crowdfunding would exist. It had to do with needs to change the law. So there are things that where even the law can be changed. And that's part of the boldness of an entrepreneur or somebody with entrepreneurial thinking. And one word back to primarily to the CEOs, but also to everybody in corporates. People say, yeah, but these guys, they do their own job. I mean, they would not survive in our organization. Well, they do, because there's so many people who have all kinds of, again, constraints. Family bought a house and everything, and cannot afford to risk everything they have for a startup. So they're primed to be top-notch entrepreneurial members of an enterprise.
Mhm. Thank you, both Axel and Mattes. Just my little feedback.
Thank you, Tanya. So we'd like to encourage you, because now you know there is help. So BlueCallom can help you on your way to the CEO with your idea and your strategy, and you know that there is a solid execution plan framework supported by software. So even if it's not in your job description, the CEO will have open doors for any good strategy. So just try it. Okay, so if you have any questions, we are here for you. So here you have our credentials, so you can see the phone number, you can reach us on LinkedIn, etc. We are also organizing a framework training with Mattes and Axel and the team. You can find all the details on our website, and it will take place the 22nd, 23rd of March next year. So it's soon. It's online, so you can even do it from everywhere you are. As I mentioned, maybe you have to make a trip to Bali to justify to do online from BlueCallom, or you can do it at home. So thank you very much, Mattes, Axel. Thank you very much, Tanya, for organizing everything. And I hope you enjoyed our webinar and you follow us on LinkedIn. And I wish you all a good time before Christmas and all the best for the new year. And talk to you soon in January for our next webinar. You will find it on our website and on LinkedIn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.